Right. So we're just going to take a few minutes or a few seconds here to let our attendees join us. That number is quickly going up. So in just a minute or so, we will get started with our presentation this morning. Thank you everyone for coming in. All right, so as everyone gets ready to trickle or is trickling in, I just want to give a few reminders about our room. You can access closed captioning at the bottom of your screen. We have Spanish interpretation and ASL interpreters here with us, and this session will be recorded as well. So I don't want to take up too much time. I'm going to introduce Carmen and Vanessa from Romoland School District, and they are going to share about how they are united in inclusion. So here you go.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have everyone joining us today. It's such an honor, and we are very grateful for this opportunity to share about our journey together as we've been united in inclusion here in the Romoland School District. I'll go ahead and have my partner in crime here, Vanessa Rodriguez, introduce herself. I'm Carmen Hopkins, Director of Pupil Services in Romoland School District. If you're not familiar where Romoland's at, we are a small yet very quickly growing district in Riverside County. We have a hospital and we serve students in grades preschool through 8th grade. And both Vanessa and I have really enjoyed our time in Romoland serving with our teams and our students and our community, and we're excited to share a little bit about that journey with you today. Vanessa, I'll let you share about yourself.
Good morning, everybody. I am Vanessa Rodriguez. I am the preschool director here in Romoland School District. As Carmen said, we are a small district that is quickly growing, which is kind of how our story begins here in Romoland with our journey to inclusion. Just so that everybody's on the same page with me, I was so new to the world of special education when I came to preschool and to Romoland anyways. And so I'm an expert in preschool and I love the littles. And there was just such a need for us to grow this inclusive, supportive environment that I became like quickly just overwhelmed and excited and like, let's do this, let's go quick. And Carmen's like, yeah, let's go slow to go fast, Vanessa. So I get really thrilled very easily about things that I'm passionate about. So I apologize in advance to those of you who are translating. I will do my best to slow down. And I am just really excited to be sharing our journey with all of you guys here. So welcome.
All right, so just to give you a little bit more background too on our relationship and how we came together. It was through vulnerability. And as I serve in the district, supporting student services, that education. And I come with a special education background as a former special education teacher myself into the educational world. And I wasn't quite aware how preschool was going to be such a large part of my life at the time of entering into the position I'm in now. And as it quickly started to fall on my radar, preschool, I was like, who's in charge of preschool around here? So I was able to meet with Vanessa and introduce myself and very vulnerably share with her that I had needs to support students that needed support through the special education doorway with preschool. And so the conversation started with vulnerability. Me coming to her saying, I have students, we need to serve them. Not only do we have this obligation through federal and state laws, but it is right for students to have opportunities to be with their peers and to learn and grow in an environment that supports that. And so I had to kind of be vulnerable and share like what I had in place, didn't have in place, and also have a desire to share and be known as to what those needs were. And that, you know, allowed for Vanessa and I very early on to build a relationship of trust. And we had some hard conversations. She shared with me about her world. And boy, if you think there's a lot of compliance and obligation in the world of special education, oh my goodness, preschool maybe tops that. So Vanessa can share what her programs are in the early childhood education world in Romoland. I was supporting students, like I said, preschool through 8th grade and wanting to ensure that inclusive opportunities started for our students from day one, which starts when we have them enter our doorways of preschool. Vanessa, I'll let you add to that.
Yeah, so when Carmen and I first started this whole journey and we were talking about the regulations for special ed and the regulations for preschool, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. Like, you understand that it's going to be difficult. Like, you understand there's regulations and red tape. And when she's listening to what my expectations are as far as supporting our preschool students, she's like, oh yeah, we've got this. So it's been, like Carmen said, we've had those really difficult conversations. One of those difficult conversations, as you are partnering with the rest of your people in your school district or program or organization, we talk about money a lot. And it's like, you know, in a marriage where you're kind of like liking somebody and you want to get to know them a little more, and you're like, are you going to be able to support me? And then you start talking about money, you're like, I'm not sure. Well, in this situation, Carmen and I both brought different pots of money together, and we're like, oh yeah, we're going to make this marriage work. So it's been a great journey. And the great thing about it is that it's getting refined every single year. Every year we reflect, and every year we have these vulnerable conversations towards the springtime, and we say, okay, what can we do better next year?
Thank you, Vanessa. So today what you will take away is you'll have a better understanding of our journey, our history together. You'll get some takeaways for us on the structuring and systemizing of inclusive preschool program. You will also learn, we're all about not just sharing about our vulnerability and courage between our relationship, but the things that we did really well and the things we realized quickly that we needed to do better. And so we want to share some of that with you and what our steps were to take initially and where we're at and how we move forward, in hopes that you'll be able to take our experiences and journey back to where you serve students and hopefully increase inclusive opportunities for those that you serve. Vanessa?
So what we want to do right now is, you know, meet you where you are, right? That's kind of what we do. We meet our students where they are. Just take a few moments and reflect. We have a couple questions here. This is a great activity to do with your team as you guys are starting those conversations of creating your inclusive programs and growing your inclusive programs. And we just want to think about, you know, one thing that you are really excited about, that you're doing well right now as on your journey to inclusion. Things that you might be passionate about. So there's multiple questions that you can look at right here and just kind of reflect on one. Feel free, if you like, you can add it in the chat. You can keep this to yourself. It doesn't need to, you know, go anywhere. It's just a moment for us to start, right? Because you got to start somewhere. So we have these conversations to just say, where am I and where do I want to go? All right, I hope that was enough time for you to kind of just take that moment to reflect, and I'm going to move us forward to the next one.
So it's important to first make sure that when we're talking about inclusion, we're really clear on what that means. And I feel as though I'm probably preaching to the choir right now. Most of you are as passionate about providing inclusive opportunities for students as we are in Romoland. But it's really about ensuring that everyone is on the same page with what that looks like. Oh, that an inclusive classroom is not just putting humans all together and hoping that it works out well. That would never be what we would consider a successful opportunity for students or staff. We understand and want everyone to understand as well and be a part of the mindset that it's not just about bringing in our students and staff to classroom environments that already exist. It's really about the design, creation, and innovation of a new space that's better for everyone. In Romoland, we are very focused on, from the top down, our visions and departments and our district in addressing the learning needs of the whole child. And we see that vision and mission of ours being one that allows us to have very intentful conversations around inclusion and what that looks like as far as creating that intentional space. So just really from the get-go, there's a ton of activities, and we just, presented one to you a few minutes ago on ways to get the conversation going. But it's also important that you're aware of the mindset and culture that is around you as a leader or an inclusioneer, and that you are being clear on what inclusion truly looks like. A lot of people together is a great step, but it is not ever going to be enough, and it's truly not what's best for students. So next slide. Just making that point early on is important.
So when we, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Vanessa's going to share a little bit about this next slide, and I'll chime in as well.
When we talk about creating that space for all of our students, we have conversations with the entire instructional team, teachers and instructional aides, about how we're going to make the environment reflect the needs of the students in the classroom. So we want to make sure that we're not trying to get the kids to do what the teacher needs them to do. We want to make sure that the teacher understands our job as the educators in these beautiful classrooms is to support the children as they grow and develop their skill set. And so we actually need to take the cues from our children and their families first. So we do a lot of intentional conversations and planning and training with our staff to make sure they understand how to do this and they're equipped with the tools to go ahead and implement.
And I love the quote here at the bottom, just really quick, Vanessa, sorry, going back.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to go back.
It really does emulate what the definition of inclusion is. It's, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And again, just really helping others clearly understand what inclusion looks like and the intentionality behind that we'll talk more about, but just that is so key in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Vanessa. Next slide. So where are you and your teams and districts and those that you serve with when it comes to inclusion? It is a spectrum that we kind of look at where we're at. Where are you on this continuum? And what would that next step be? Vulnerability, and there's a lot of great resources out there. I was able to be given the opportunity a few years back to share about inclusion in an LCAP workshop, which was a huge opportunity to be able to present and share with our stakeholders on where we as a district support students and how we're looking to build from where we were at, giving the history, what we where we want to continue to grow along this continuum. I harness Shelley Moore. There's a ton of great resources out there. SIP's such a great resource as well, with sharing these different types of opportunities, videos, practices that others are doing, but really helping others see where we're at and where we want to go next is important. Next slide.
Also, I believe our presentation will be shared out. We have links on these slides. So there's videos. Carmen and I know that many of you guys have seen these videos. So we do have some links in here, and you'll be able to access those when you take a look at them on your own. Alrighty, so we have a activity that we would like to share with you. And we just kind of want to talk about where you are on your reflection of, you know, where is everybody on the continuum of inclusion, right? So we have, here we go, we have a survey. Uh-oh. Give me just 1 second really quick, you guys. If you guys are able to, oh, it didn't go back. My keyboard is not letting me go back on my presentation. One moment, sorry guys. There we go. You got that? All right. So if you guys are able to go on to tejoin.com, there's an access code here, and I'll be able to.
And I'll put that access code in our chat as well.
I'm sorry, something's not allowing my my screens to open up properly. So let's see. You guys want to go ahead and join this? It's just a quick little question. And what we're doing is we're just trying to find out where everybody is as far as our group that's here right now. So as we answer the question that's coming onto this, Carmen, were you able to put this in the chat?
Yes.
Thank you. As you guys answer this question as far as where you are on the evolution of inclusion, we'll be able to get those results live, and I'll share them with everyone as far as what the percentage is, or about how many are in what stage of development right now. Okay, I'm not sure if the access code is working or not right now, because I'm not getting any responses just yet, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and we'll move on. We do see that we have some programs that are in integration. Sorry that it's taking a while to get in, I apologize. Oh, good. So it looks like some of them are coming in. Yay. All right, it looks like we have a good amount of our group that is in inclusion and integration. So we've got some great work that's already taking place with everyone that's here, which we kind of knew that already. Let's see, I'm going to move us to the next slide. All right.
I enjoy seeing that there's some vulnerability in some of the responses. A lot of people are sharing that the goal is inclusion, but it's really looking more like integration at this point, and how it's, you know, on a case-by-case basis for student, so that the goal is to keep moving forward with more meaningful experiences for students. So that's great that there's that recognition and awareness so that you can address the need moving forward. And a lot of you are sharing that there's some classrooms where there's full inclusion. However, it's not a district-wide practice. And that's a little bit more difficult. It looks like I'm seeing for some smaller districts that have to partner with county offices of ed in order to support all of the students that they're serving just due to their size. It's growing in a lot of different grade levels. And there's a lot of work out there going to make sure that organizations are kind of shifting through and towards inclusive opportunities more so for students.
One of the things that I liked on this one was that we have that it's open but scared and biased. So students deserve to be in a general education. We need to layer supports. It's a bit scary, you know, when staff don't know how to work in an inclusive environment. And that's where those really deep conversations of, you know, tell me what you know, tell me what you need, and let me make sure that I'm aware so that I can support you.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about our blended program now that we've kind of gotten a feel for where everyone else is, and you guys have been able to share a little bit of your thoughts. Thank you guys for participating so much in that activity. And we'll give you like a very brief little snippet of our journey. So when Carmen and I came together, we knew that we needed to join forces. Basically, we knew that we wanted to present an inclusive environment where we had all early childhood students in an inclusive environment that allowed for them to have access to their peers. We wanted to have instructional teams that were from the special ed and general education side so that they could support each other. So we had a vision of inclusive classroom for students, but also inclusion with our staff as well. So that's kind of where this got started. And this is kind of where we were at that time. So at that time, we had all of our general education students, we had them in our Head Start and State Preschool classrooms. So those are the classrooms and programs that we offer here in Romoland. We also have an early Head Start classroom. And that is a home-based program. But our general ed students were in those classrooms and those classrooms only. We did have a little bit of consult and support with our SLPs. They were monitoring progress on their goals. We had a copy of the IEP in some cases for our students, but students that had special needs or even speech, those services were done outside of the classroom. Sometimes we didn't even know when those services were taking place or that a child had an IEP. So this is really, I mean, it was a rocky beginning. We also did have students in that had more severe needs at a different site completely, like out of our school district. So students that were preschool age and they did not fall under the umbrella of gen ed or speech only. They were actually having services at another program outside of our community. And then of course we had the more restrictive environments for our students that were, you know, medically fragile or whatnot. So we had, as you can see, plenty of silos. And we just knew that they needed to start talking, because it was confusing when they would, somebody would ask, well, does this student need support? Or we would make a referral and they're like, why are you referring this kid? They're getting speech services. So it was a little confusing at the very beginning.
We knew that there was a need when Vanessa and I first sat down and had some time alone. We saw very quickly that there was a need to better communicate and correspond with each other. And that's really where the progress started. We also had a very unique situation with stars aligning, like they do sometimes in the world of education, where our school board was looking into bringing our students that were currently being served in those county programs outside of our district boundaries back home to their schools in their district that they resided in. So we had a unique opportunity. We knew that we wanted to provide inclusive opportunities for students. Vanessa and I didn't truly understand at that time how much better that was going to be for all of our students. We just knew there was these needs, like we knew communication needed to improve. We knew we were bringing our students from county Office of Ed programs back to the district. And at the time, we're smaller. As I mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, we are quickly growing. And so that really also shifted our mindset with inclusion as well, knowing that we have a larger number of students to serve and support. So when you look at this, I know those of you out there in the world of compliance with SPED were probably like, oh yeah, there needed to be some changes. There did, and we knew that. And we were so grateful for the pioneers in Romoland that had gotten us to this point and the work that they did. It was a very slow and steady paced work. But it was now a doorway of opportunity opened, and I get really excited about doorways of opportunities, and most of the time that comes through legislation or through just growth and a need for change, and we leverage those moments. And so what I thought was a small need at the time, I had from a county program who were primarily qualifying for special ed under intellectual disability. I needed a space for them. And I didn't have at the time really the ability to support those students in a classroom on their own with a teacher and staff and equipment. That was going to be very costly. And so it was a little bit of, I have this need, how can we start co-teaching? And it kind of went from there. Very, very innocently, I would say, but also as we experienced for ourselves as leaders, what that inclusive opportunity could look like for students. We're like, wait a minute, this is not just a numbers game. This is what's right for all students to receive. And then for me to better understand how that gap between, ages 3 to 5 developmentally is such a prime time for us to really support students with all of their peers, and that's both ends, gen ed and sped. We were seeing how it was so beneficial for our students that did not need the level of support through special ed that the students that receiving the services did, how it was important for them to be around their peers and for them to experience diversity. And so it was really a time of ahas where we thought we were just checking some boxes, and then we're like, wait a minute, inclusion's what's right, not just a way to solve a problem. So that is kind of a little bit of history on again, where we were at on that continuum and how we had some opportunities and we leveraged that moment, and then those moments leveraged us. So that was exciting.
Yeah, when we took a look at this at the very beginning, like we talked about those vulnerable conversations, this was one of those vulnerable conversations. It's like, ooh, is this where we want to end? Is this how we want our programs to continue? And like Carmen said, being able to say, you know what, this is what's right. Inclusion's what's right. So then we took our vision, we knew where we were, we had our starting point, and we started the creation of designing our program. So in our we call them our blended preschool programs. So it's blended with students that are gen ed and special ed. We knew that this needed to be set on a foundation of partnerships. So we needed families to be comfortable with understanding that their students are, if they were part of the county program, they were coming back into a classroom that was not just students with special needs. And so we wanted to partner with the families and make sure they felt comfortable as well with this change.
Vanessa, can I just add to that
Absolutely.
too? Something that's become an aha for us, and I know many of you out there, is, you know, when you've told families over a period of time that their child's needs can't be met with their general ed peers, and then you switch that on, creating some fear for them. And you're going to have to regain that trust. In my mind, I thought, oh, they'll just be so excited. This is so amazing. But I realized the messages they received early on was your child can't have their needs met with their general education peers. So they're going to go to a separate classroom. And now we're saying, just kidding, we can bring them back. We can make this happen. So there was a lot of delicacy in that conversation. And it was a challenge to maybe gain some of that trust back. I know that also occurs as other, you know, grade levels address inclusive opportunities for students, families, that their child had to be served outside of gen ed. And now we're trying to regain that trust of helping them see that we truly are capable of meeting their child's needs in the general education classroom. So that's something you have to be aware of. That kind of stigma is out there in the other end.
Yeah, and that was something that we knew kind of from the beginning that we were going to get a little bit of pushback. And so we did our due diligence. You know, we looked at a variety of different practices. We looked at different curriculums. We wanted to make sure that what we were doing in this classroom is going to be supportive of all learners, right? So we wanted to make sure that every opportunity and experience that we provided allowed each child to access the curriculum and access the classroom. We offer this blended program through our state preschool classroom. And for those of you who offer state preschool or are familiar with the preschool world, as Carmen said, there are lots of regulations and requirements, and they're there to set a solid foundation for our earliest learners to really get that foundation that says, I'm ready for kindergarten. And so in order for us to do that, we have personalized learning plans for each of our state preschool students. And that's because it's a best practice. It's a best practice for littles in general. So us having these plans already in place and then having students with special needs come in with their personalized plans, it wasn't too much of a conflict as far as like, well, these kids have this and these kids have this. No, they all have personalized learning plans. But now the work for the adults is to make sure that all of these plans are being supported, and that we're revisiting them. We're revisiting the goals. We're adjusting daily to the students' needs. Our teachers use the DRDP, the Desired Results Developmental Profile, to assess our students. And as they're taking notes every single day, if you're familiar with preschool, they adjust. They're like, okay, this student needs a little bit more support. This student needs a modification. And so the teachers take these opportunities to collaborate. We have the state preschool teacher and we have the special education preschool teacher, and they work collaboratively in these plans. They look at the lesson plans and they put the supports in place and they personalize daily for each of our students. All righty, so that set the structure. We knew we wanted to have an inclusive environment where all the kids were getting all the needs and everything they have. But we also needed to make sure that the team was on board and that the team knew they were supported. So we planned lots and lots of trainings. We had staff specialists come into the classrooms to support our staff in the class. So once a month, we actually have a non-student day, and we provide professional development for our entire team throughout the whole department. So instructional aides, teachers, special ed and gen ed, they're together and they receive the same trainings at the same exact time. One of the reasons we were doing this was because we needed all of our staff to understand the curriculum and how to implement and support the students within a inclusive curriculum. We use high scope. It's a curriculum for preschoolers. It's for a general ed classroom, but it's also an inclusive curriculum that easily lends itself to just best practices, right, for all students. So all of our team was getting trained together on this. Our gen ed staff that were not very familiar with an IEP or what it looked like or goals, we had to train them on how to support students with IEPs in the classroom, because even though there's a special ed teacher, there's a special education aide, the special ed students don't belong to them only. These students are enrolled in a state preschool classroom. It's a gen ed state preschool classroom. They are gen ed students first. So that's the mentality. We must help our staff understand that these students are all state preschool students. So they all get the same supports. And then we personalize those supports. We also provide staff. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and we really talk about that a lot in around that MTSS conversation, and looking at our MTSS and how we address the needs at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And this type of training really helped open those conversations up, teaching our preschool partners that we have an MTSS we use in our other grade levels. And so this gave them the tools they need to understand how to support students with some of these strategies that might be better used at tier 1, tier 2, instead of going straight to tier 3 and me calling Vanessa being like, why are you people sending me so many referrals for special ed assessment? Like, make it to that. So we could help build that awareness around not just what disability is, but also, like Vanessa was saying, around evidence-based practices and how we really address those in the different types of, multi-tiered systems of support that we use in our world of education.
Some of the great things. No, you're fine. Some of the great things about this partnership has been that our departments have become closer. So, we had a school psychologist come in and train our staff on, the differences between behaviors and disabilities, right? Because when you're working with general ed staff in a preschool environment that have not supported students with special needs, they kind of feel like we don't know what to do. We're kind of helpless. We didn't go to school for this. And it's like, oh no, you did. You went to school for child development. You get it. You know that there's a continuum and we're going to support all of our learners. We just need to learn what the differences are between behaviors and a disability. Some of the students that had autistic-like tendencies, staff were getting like nervous, like, oh no, what if I do something wrong? You can't do something wrong if you're supporting the students at their level and you're providing them the best instruction. So it was giving them that confidence and helping them understand that they can do this. Children are children. They're all just little kiddos that need to come to school. They need to be in a fun learning environment. They need to be able to play with their peers. And when they have that access, they're going to be able to grow. We also supported our staff with mental health and trauma-informed practices trainings because, as you guys know, coming out of COVID, that's been a thing, right? Like it's for everyone, not just our students with special needs. And it's been a great way to support our staff as well as they are working through changes and coming back to school in person. So it's been quite the journey, but letting the team know, you guys, we have a vision. We know where we're going. We know where we've been, and we're going to walk with you every step of the way. You're telling us what your concerns are. So here you are. Here's all the training and support that you can look for. Here's even additional resources and new staff that you can reach out to within our school district for support. All righty, so when we look at everything that we've been going through, like I said before, we started in that spot. We knew what our vision was. We trained with the staff. This is what we ended up with. We ended up with a preschool environment that was structured appropriately for littles. We had such an amazing journey with our school district, our cabinet, our school board. Everybody has been supportive of this inclusive practice. And as they see what we're doing and they're seeing the work, they're understanding, like Carmen said, that this was a way bigger opportunity than we had originally seen in the first place. So at the end of all of this work, we made sure that all of our students that are in the state preschool classroom, they have access to the classroom 5 days a week. They come 3 hours a day, and it's in the state preschool classroom. We are using HighScope. HighScope was adopted intentionally because it does lend itself to students with special needs very easily as best practices. We are also using the unique learning system, second step. We wanted to make sure that there was intentional training of the students on social emotional skills on a daily basis. So the second step has actually been really supportive for these kids to have conversations and the puppets and to discuss what might come up. How do you practice initiating play? So those are fun things that the staff have been able to support on top of the regular curriculum, as well as Orton Gillingham. You know, our goal is obviously to get our kids ready for school. So we want them reading. And there are some excellent opportunities to get students learning how to read early on. And Orton Gillingham has been a great support for our school district in that area.
Vanessa, I just wanted to add too that, you know, what we were doing is looking at what we were using in grades TK through 8 and how we build that bridge. And that's where you gain some of that partnership when you're saying, let me support you, you know, elementary schools, middle schools from the very first step, introducing their educational pathways. And so we as a district utilize everything except for HighScope. ULS, second step is what our school counselors use. Our classroom teachers use that for SEL learning, Orton Gillingham. So look at your districts are already utilizing. A lot of them have supplemental materials and things that can be adapted to meet the needs even more so of all students. So that's a really great way to win over friends and influence people with your journey, is to look at what they're already using and bring that forth as something that we can offer students early on. You know, your TK and kinder teachers just love those preschool students because they've had that exposure. What a better way to talk about that student leaving an inclusive classroom, right? And at preschool level and going into more of an inclusive classroom by letting your partners in those grade levels know that you've already started the work for them around the curriculum that they're utilizing. Those are the students, they're the unicorns and gems teachers love to get. So it's a way of really selling the work you're doing in preschool. Like we're not just hanging out playing with Play-Doh all day. So, which is
although Play-Doh is very
important. It is. But we want them to know the intentionality of the work that's being done in those programs.
Correct. And so, you know, making sure that as we've gone through, you know, truly structuring everything so that our staff are having their needs met, our students are having their needs met, our cabinet and school board are having their needs met, because again, we are representing the school district as we are growing and changing. And the inclusive practices is really important because in preschool, we know that developmentally, this gap is never going to be as small as it is now. As they get older, it's going to get bigger. So we want to support this and just capitalize on this opportunity early on so that they have access to as many supports and their peers in the preschool classroom. So Carmen, if you want to just touch on this and kind of, this is now what our continuum looks like versus what it was earlier.
So I want to start off by sharing that, we started back in 2016 with this opportunity of blended, and that was with one session of blended being offered to our students. We now have 4 sessions as of this school year, and there are 4 sessions ready to go again for next school year. We are, like I said, a very quickly growing district. So real estate's a bit of a hot commodity here. Vanessa and I are always like asking, they see us coming. Everyone in the district knows we're coming, asking for facility space. And so we have to collaborate with our different departments on how to make that work, because we do also have to house other students in different grade levels, but we bring the money, we bring the innovation. We're very flexible with how we get that increase. And we've been so fortunate that our school board has allowed for us to share often with them at board meetings and through our cabinet, updating them weekly on the progress that we make with these programs and how beneficial it's been. And they've been really excited about that. So as you see here, this is our current continuum. We've grown. We have inclusive preschool program offerings that are accelerating all over the place. Our goal is to have 0 preschool classrooms in the future that are not inclusive. We're down to 1 now. And we, again, are looking at how to always bring people on board for a better understanding of that. The best thing we've done is to model it. Honestly, when SPED and Gen Ed see what is going into this, the amount of support they get, having the partnerships with staff, having 2 directors at their beck and call, because it's that important to us that they are getting what they need and supporting students and family, then the buy-in becomes one that starts to trickle across the district. And staff have come and told Vanessa, like, we want to teach in blended. We want to be a part of blended. So it speaks for itself. And you'll see here that it's also something that has allowed us to increase more inclusive opportunities for students as they transition to TK and Kinder and so forth. We cannot defend or support a student in an inclusive environment than leaving and going to a secluded environment. And that looks different, we know, for every student and what their needs are, but we're grateful for the work that our schools do with our SAI collaborative model for students in TK through 8. And it became very obvious to us very quickly as we had students transitioning out of blended that parents were not going to support that idea either. And we're like, they're right. So we wanted to get behind that. And that, again, caused for new conversations to occur. We decrease restrictive environments for all students. Steps you must do. Just as a recap, mindset, vision, key. Do the work. That work takes time. It takes a lot of collaborative time from the top down, not just with your board, not just with your cabinet, but with your association relationships too. Be vulnerable and open to sharing and being transparent. Professional development, as Vanessa shared, collaboration time, intentional time. That means preparing your budget lines to ensure that that time is being given for teachers and for instructional aides and all the people that get paid to do the work. They're going to need more time for planning. You're going to look at your calendars, your professional development days, your PLC days, your teacher planning days, and be intentional with that. People are responsive to time and money, as we all know in our world. So be aware of that and be prepared to provide funding to help support that. Be flexible and innovative. I would come to Vanessa like, you cannot put 20 different boxes of options out who struggles with choice making skills. It's going to be disastrous. And well, I have to follow, Eckers or whatever it was at the time. There's always something with her role too. And so we came up with creative solutions. It wasn't it's my way or the highway. It was, how do we make this work together? And then again, if I haven't said the word collaboration enough and how that works across departments, you're really going to want to collaborate with your human resource department. Staffing is crucial. It's one of the most important things you will do to ensure that your programs are inclusive by putting the right people into the positions. And that starts with having the right questions on those interview panels for you to scout and vet people. If you have someone that's saying in an interview that they can't wait to be in a secluded classroom and they are not open to inclusive opportunities, they're probably not the right fit for the work you're wanting to do. So keeping that in mind, partnering with your human resources department. Next. Of course, there are going to be challenges, and of course, there are going to be solutions. So when you're looking at be mindful that there's always going to be a workaround. Sometimes it takes some time, and don't just depend on yourself and maybe another leader to come up with that. Reach out to those that are working with students. They have way better solutions than Vanessa and I have most of the time. You have to have an inclusive curriculum. The co-teach model is so important, that it's understood and that true co-teaching is occurring. So again, there's training that goes with that, professional development, professional learning time to be protected. Look very strategically at the curriculum options. It cannot be students with disabilities being served through one curriculum and other students getting something else. It is class-wide, system-wide, and that is how the design of your program will be most successful. You want to be prepared. Your staff are going to have concerns. People have fears. Right now, what is it? We're always hearing about behaviors, mental health. Be prepared. Offer professional development, give our staff the tools they need to help students be successful, and give them your time. Set time aside so that everyone can express those concerns and needs, and have time to come up with a solution for that. Funding, we all know nothing's for free. Be creative with that. We work very closely with our business services department. Had to come up with creative ways of delegating out my budget. And I've been very fortunate that while I've shared vision and process, my business services departments come back showing me how I can do that. Our SELPA has been a great partner with us with our creative ways of getting around some of our budgeting challenges as well. And then of course, SIP has helped us a lot with that as we've engaged in the grant with them. Obviously, you want to be in compliance and follow obligations. So keeping those things in mind. You want to also be aware that there's lessons to be learned. Reflect on that and grow from it. Don't take it personally. Do not place a student in any classroom just based on their disability. We learned very early on that that was a big mistake that we'd made. Qualifying with a certain disability doesn't mean they get inclusive opportunities or not. As soon as that clicked, our entire mindset changed as leaders and those supporting the classrooms, and we made substantial changes to how students were being served, and it opened the doorways that should have been opened a long time ago. Lesson learned. We don't do that anymore. You want to personalize learning for the whole child. You don't want to just add the same SAI minutes, like I said, onto every IEP. Not every kid needs that in the blended program, so we're personalized with that. And you want to make sure when transition meeting IEP time comes, you want to have administrators at those meetings so they can build those partnerships with families early on, understand the need of the student, and ensure inclusive opportunities are being provided moving forward as the student transition. Next slide. Results that we've seen come from limited program options being lessened and more doorways of opportunity opened for students. We see more fully inclusive program settings now for our students, high quality pre-academic personalized learning environments, which is key. And then also the students being able to build upon their social, emotional, behavioral learning needs early on as they transition into TK and Kinder. Those were not things we had before, and now we're seeing the fruits of our labor. And it's been a great opportunity for everyone in our community to be able to experience that growth as we have taken this journey together. Next slide. Looking forward, like I shared, our goal is full inclusive preschool opportunities across the board. We go slow to go fast with that, which is really hard for both Vanessa and I, but we've learned that that's how it's best done. We're looking at not only increasing our preschool inclusive environments, but also having inclusive classrooms fully for students as we move forward with them, TK through 8th. And that's been a growing process. We've seen a lot of growth there, but continuing that journey. We want to also continue professional development. I don't know if anybody else, and this is me being sarcastic since some of you don't know me out there. Yeah, the world in education's changed a lot over the last 3 years. What we were looking at professionally for development of our staff has changed, and we've had to move with that. I always say, if there's a problem that comes across in the world, I'm pretty sure preschool's already figured it out, because they're so innovative and constantly growing with the changes of education, legislation, obligations, in addition to, and most importantly, the needs of students. And then in this picture, I just want to point out, students with and without the support of special education are represented in this picture. You can't tell who. That's the point. When we, bring other districts or LEAs in and do tours, they often are like, we can't tell who's here to support SPED, who's here to support gen ed. We're like, well, that's not really how it works. And we're so glad you can't tell. Be obvious. A fully inclusive classroom is there to serve all students and all of their personalized learning needs. So we know we've done our job well when that's not evident. Next slide. When you know better, do better. We have learned a lot through this journey. We're still learning. We want you to take a moment, reflect on your role as an educator. What can your just next step be? Is it a conversation? Go to discussing this more with leaders? Is it an opportunity for you to just reach out to another educator or family? Know better, do better. Next slide. So we do have about 3 minutes left for questions, but I want to point out that Vanessa and I have only been able to take this journey together because of the collaboration of those in our district and outside of our district. We've learned so much from others through the support of our SIP partnership, through the support of State Preschool, through the support of the County Office of Ed and our SELPA, and we would not be here without that opportunity. So we want to pay it forward. We do have a slide that has our information on it here at the bottom with the links you'll see in the Padlet that is shared later on. Please reach out to us. We're happy to bring in your team, talk to you, show you what we've got, where we're at, and then hear your story and your personalized needs, and just share with you what we've been able to learn. And hopefully that helps others, because our goal isn't just students in Romoland School District have inclusive opportunities and programs, but all students everywhere. So I hope that that was, today a little bit of a learning opportunity for everyone that's joined us, and that you're able to take just one thing away and maybe help bring a more positive learning environment and a more inclusive opportunity for students where you serve. So thank you. And Vanessa, if you have any closing words.
I just want to thank you guys for, doing this journey already, because all of our kids, they deserve to have this inclusive environment. And I'm grateful that you guys are doing this work. It's been a lot of fun to learn about special education and partnering with Carmen. And like she said, all of our partnerships, SIP, EAP, State Preschool, our school district, and just making those relationships stay strong. So, reach out to those people that you can, that will support you. We do have, Carmen, there was someone had requested the worksheet. If you're able to send that worksheet so that we can, did you attach that?
What worksheet are we talking about
The very first one, sorry, the questions that we had talked about, the start of like the
reflective. It's attached in our
okay, yes, that's what I thought.
Everything on our slide deck's attached. You can click on a link at the last part of the slide deck and you'll see that it's there. And I'm just looking here at our questions. Has your vision at times collided, and how have you worked out those details? not everyone quite is on board with inclusion, and I'm sure we're not the only ones experiencing that. Something that's really hit home with me is just meeting people where they're at. And I'm passionate, Vanessa's passionate. Sometimes it takes us pausing to understand where someone's at and trying to get to what the antecedent is of that mindset and how we can move forward together. Of course, you can't force inclusion on people. That's never going to work. But I love, I hear Katie Novak share a lot, just how also inclusion is not a negotiable thing. Students have the right, and there's legislation around that and compliance that we're responsible for monitoring with, as far as, you know, where we're providing students opportunities throughout our state. We are obligated to ensure a least restrictive environment. So I always say, if you put, you know, the law, the legislation, whatever it is, put the policy away from you and say, this is what our job is to do here. How do we do this together? Then it's not Carmen's, you know, personal mission. This is our obligation as educators to students. How do we work together? What's our next step? Our stakeholders sharing the same vision, I think, kind of answered that. What do you recommend for a high school program that has fosters school district on-site collaboration moving forward? Children are eligible. It starts with the conversations. You need to bring those stakeholders making decisions together, share concerns, be willing to go slow to go fast, work with others. Again, we're happy to talk about that because we want to make sure our students, and we partner with our high school district to ensure during those transition meetings that, hey, this student is in an inclusive environment. How do we continue that? Does the ratio of student teachers stay the same if you have a preschool teacher and a SPED teacher in the classroom? Do you want to touch base on that, Vanessa?
We actually have 24 students in the classroom and 4 to 5 adults on any given day. The ratio for state preschool is 1 adult for 8 children. Obviously, because we do have students with special needs, we do add additional adults in there as needed.
And I fund a special ed teacher and special ed staff member and instructional aide in that classroom from my end. That case care can have the maximum amount that the ed code allows. However, one of the things that Vanessa and I learned very quickly is you probably don't want to dogpile every student into one session or a classroom. And it's really allowing for all students to also experience diversity with their peers. How do you encourage and motivate the gen ed staff to attend these trainings and accept resources when they're not willing to? So we make sure that we plan it on time that's contractual. If it's outside of the workday, it is not required. So we look at the administrative professional development days. We're very, very blessed in Romoland to have a lot of collaboration time. Our teachers have 2, in my world, in preschool it's a little different, but in my world, that special ed teacher has 2 PLCs a week and a Wednesday that's devoted to teacher time, half day for early release of students. We honor that. We abide by our association agreements, and we find where we can, which, you know, requires subs at times. So we have to sometimes get creative right now with there being some staffing shortages out there. And so really having the intentional time take place during contractual time. Because then
the other thing is, the other thing is that we want to make sure that the staff share the same vision, right? Because that is going to help us move forward. So I spent a lot of time with my staff, helping them understand why the work of inclusion is so important. And so when, you know, we talk about what's best for students, and when you're in preschool and you get into preschool to teach preschool, you're not in it for the money. So we reminded them, like, why are you here? That really helped us with getting them on board.
I know our time is up.
Yes.
We had till 11, so we want to let everyone know so we can move on to the next session. But thank you everyone again for attending. Please reach out to us. We're happy to set up some time virtually or to have you visit in person. We love to share about the work we're doing, and we love to hear about the work you're doing because it inspires us to make the changes to where we know we have room to grow still. So I want to thank Vanessa. She's been a great partner over the years. And I want to again thank SIP for this opportunity. I would also be obliged to say thank you again to our County Office of Ed, our SELPA, in addition to all of the stakeholders here in Romoland School District that make these opportunities that are best for students available. So thank you, everyone, and take care.
Hi guys, thank
Vanessa.
you.
Thank you all. Don't forget to join us for our closing statement and our last keynote of the day. That's in the agenda, and you can access it in the auditorium. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.